Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you everybody for joining. I'm really looking forward to this talk by Professor Asad, but just by way of introduction, um, Dr. Adi and I, we're really honored that Dr. Asad is with us. He's a professor at Akhawat and former Vice Chancellor at the Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. He's a former MIT undergraduate and has a PhD from Stanford in economics. Dr. Zaman has taught at globally renowned institutions, including Penn, Columbia, Johns Hopkins, and Bill Kent. His journey bridges rigorous academic economics and a deeper reflection on the human, social, and Islamic dimensions of knowledge. From econometrics to the value of human lives, from theory to teaching, an Islamic approach to statistics and economics. Through his work, he challenges business as usual paradigms and invites us to reimagine how knowledge, ethics, and faith intertwine. His talk today will be on the theory of the firm, how profit becomes service. So, Dr. Asad, I will spotlight you so everybody can properly see you. And you're welcome to share your slides.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let's see if we can get the technical stuff started. Okay, so as far as I can see, the screens is being shared and we should be on the first slide. If
Yes,
everybody can see it,
all good.
then we are good to go. Okay. So we were going to talk about the theory of the firm, but the theory of the firm is embedded within the theory of economics, and theory of economics is embedded within Western social science. And unless we understand the whole, we cannot understand the part. So today we are going to discuss what Western social science is about. So there is much unlearning we need to do before we can start learning the Islamic theory of the firm, because we have all absorbed a lot of ideas from our Western education, and these ideas are mostly wrong or in conflict with Islamic ideals. Okay, so social science is really a study of a human society, and social science, as we know it, comes from Europeans and their experiences codified into lessons. So basically, social science should be called European or Western social science because it's based on the study of history of European society. So we want to understand social science, we need to understand European history, and to the extent that it shaped their understanding of the world. So to start an arbitrary point, during the 19th century, Europeans conquered about 85% of the globe, and they destroyed indigenous cultures, institutions, knowledge all around the globe. And so they created the modern world, and more than that, they created the modern world in their own image. So what was European society is now replicated all around the globe, including over the Islamic world. So if we want to understand the modern world, we must understand Western ideological frameworks and Western erroneous social theories, because that's how we talk about the world today. So unless we know the language, we cannot discuss the phenomena that we are interested in. So that's what happened in the 19th century. In the 20th century, two world wars destroyed European power, and that allowed successful movements for independence in the former colonies, including all over the Islamic world. But even though over the Islamic world, political independence was achieved in some form, freedom of thought has not been achieved. And modern educational institutions around the globe teach us Eurocentric knowledge. So everybody, no exceptions, has learned to see the world from the eyes of Europeans. And so, to some extent or the other, people, we can free our minds, we can decolonize knowledge, but it requires a lot of effort. So, we're going to take a few initial steps. And so, there are two critical foundational assumptions within Western knowledge that we all learn. One of them is that the Western civilization is the most advanced civilization that the world has ever seen. Like the Qawm of Ad said, who can be like us in the Quran? So they also think they make the same da'wah that there is no one like us. They are the apex of humanity. And so, implication of this is that progress means to become like the West. And this first assumption is now not very strong, and a lot of people have learned how to see through it. By no means the majority, but a lot of people. But especially with the events in Palestine. But the second assumption is much more critical. And this assumption is that Western knowledge produced over the past 3 to 4 centuries is superior to all other knowledge, including the Quran and the entire Islamic heritage. So these are two foundational assumptions which we all learn if we are educated in the West or educated in copies of Western educational institutions in the East. So today, all over the Islamic world, leaders and the populations are pursuing policies and taking decisions which reflect belief in these assumptions. The leaders are trying to make Karachi look like New York. That's their conception of progress. And the people, the Muslims all over the world, are teaching their children Western knowledge to a huge extent and are not teaching them anything from the Islamic intellectual heritage. So, by actions, we are agreed to these ideas, even if we may not agree to them intellectually. So, if we want to overcome these errors, then we have to do deconstruction of Western knowledge. So there are two kinds of knowledge, physical sciences and social sciences. The physical sciences are evidently and undeniably powerful. Western technology affects our daily lives on a minute-to-minute basis. We are using Zoom, we are using internet. All of these are Western inventions. So we can not deny the knowledge, but we can question whether the effect of this knowledge has been good for mankind or bad for mankind. And to just throw out one idea, last century was the deadliest in human history in terms of taking the largest amount of lives. And all these deaths can be attributed to science. But this is not our main concern today. Our main concern is with social sciences. So we'll put physical sciences to the one side and we will think about social sciences in general and economics in particular. So just as the success of physical science is undeniable, the failure of social science, Western social science, is also undeniable. So the failure is evident in the climate catastrophe, the destruction of families, the increase of loneliness, unhappiness, suicides, drunkenness, psychological uh, problems in the Western societies, which we in the Islamic societies, in learning to be more and more like them, are also uh, following in their footsteps. So, physical science is a success in terms, at least, of knowledge. Social science is a failure. It hasn't been able to prevent wars or improve the human condition, increasing inequality, increasing economic uh, and other kinds of catastrophes. So, how can we understand Western social science? Well, basically, Western social science comes from lessons that the West derived from their own historical experience. So, I'm going to go through very quickly some of the highlights of this historical experience. You won't find this material in conventional historical textbooks at all. So, about in 300 AD, there was the Council of Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity, and then Rome. He enforced orthodoxy on Roman Empire, and the um, knowledge, all of the knowledge was basically concentrated in the churches, and there was very little of it. And that was what led to 1,000 years of dark ages in Europe. One of the things to understand is that European society was very different from others. There were nation states, but the church, actually, the Catholic Church, ruled, and it ruled through control of knowledge. All of the knowledge was within the church, and they didn't really, there was no knowledge. So the Dark Ages was an important part of the power of the Catholic Church. So then around 11th, 12th century, the Crusades began, and reconquest of Islamic Sicily and Islamic Spain occurred. And all of this led to the influx of knowledge from Islamic civilization, which was far, far ahead. The number of books, somebody said, in one of the libraries in Al Andalus was greater than all the books in Europe combined. So at that time, we were far ahead of the Western knowledge. And so, when knowledge started getting into, and that was what led to the end of the Dark Ages. But the Catholic Church did not like this at all, and they monitored and rejected knowledge, and they started the Inquisition to burn people who tried to get new ideas from the Islamic civilization. So, as a result of this rigid suppression of knowledge, the Protestant movement started, and basically they rejected Catholic orthodoxy, and that was the dogma that was in conflict with new teachings coming in. So they created space for absorption of knowledge from the Islamic civilization. But this led to war because Catholics were power was built on knowledge, and the Protestants challenged this power. So there was a century of bloody battles between Catholics and Protestants, which devastated Europe. So after 100 years of religious battles, everybody got tired of religion, and the Europeans decided to build a secular society. They said that the problems are caused by religion, so we need to. So, up until the 16th century, social organization, all the theory, political theory, economic theory, was based on Christianity. Just like in Islamic civilization, all social theory was based on the Sharia and the fiqh. But in the 16th century, a new generation of scholars decided to abandon the Christian basis and rebuild society on secular foundations, meaning excluding religion. Uh, this led to a strange situation in which knowledge itself had to be rebuilt, because knowledge, as understood until then, was similar to the Islamic conception that the Bible is the basis of everything, and then there is traditions, intellectual traditions, etc., which build upon that knowledge. Though, so they rejected all of this, so they started from zero, and so basically, uh, the epistemology, the philosophy, the theory of knowledge was built, and the whole purpose of this theory of knowledge was to justify how you can get to knowledge starting from zero. And Descartes, for example, the father of Western philosophy, did this for the first time by saying that, okay, let's me start doubting everything. So I don't know anything. I have zero knowledge. So how can I get to something of which I'm sure? And so there's this famous, I think, therefore I am. So this theory of knowledge, full of many flaws, but nonetheless it was created to justify secular knowledge and to present it as certain, so as to counter religious claims to certainty. Because if you are going to create a body of knowledge in opposition to religion, then you have to say that this body of knowledge is also certain, just like your opponents claim certainty for religious knowledge. So, this theory of society, which emerged from this process, had some critical features. And because this theory was built in opposition to religion, in opposition to Christianity, it has some fundamental features which are in conflict with Islamic teachings. So, the first thing is that it claims to be knowledge, certain, true, just like physical science. So, economists will tell you that the law of supply and demand is like the law of gravity. It is not true. These social science laws are just nothing like. So, one of the critical ideas is that it was built on rejection of religion, and the idea was that reason is enough to get us to knowledge. So reason became the God, replacing religion. So this process took place over 2 centuries, and we don't have time to go into it. But basically, um, the Bible saying "love of wealth is the root of all evil" was replaced by George Bernard Shaw, "lack of wealth is the root of all evil." So complete opposite. Um and so this was a social transformation where religion was gradually removed from uh, conception of society. Once you remove religion, once you remove God, then it follows that man is necessarily an evolved animal. There's no other possibility. So then, since men are animals, society is a jungle, and we live in a Darwinian world where there's ferocious competition, and there's only one law, and that's the survival of the fittest. Also, the goal of life is pursuit of pleasure, power, profits, because there is no akhirah. So this is natural. So now that's the framework. That's how we understand society. So now the question is, what is economic theory? And basically, economic theory is a theory which is built within this conception of society. And within this conception, all human beings seek to maximize pleasure, which may come from power and from wealth. All firms, organizations seek to maximize profits. And there is, in the 20th century, there was an additional twist to this, uh, that firms, this is the only goal, this is the maximization of profits is sacred, and firms have no social responsibility. So this led to, in the 20th century, when gradually religion became weaker and weaker, and ultimately the profit maximizing triumphed over the social responsibility. So there was an enormous amount of damage which continues, caused by corporations seeking profits at the expense of welfare to society. So there's a famous, I'm just mentioning three big cases. There was a pharmaceutical company which marketed drugs as non-addictive, even though these were addictive drugs, as painkillers. And this created a nationwide addiction crisis in the USA. Hundreds of thousands of deaths due to overdose. There was a multi-billion dollar settlements and the company was dissolved. So basically, this company made money by killing hundreds of thousands of people. And this is just one example of many others that I could give. Tobacco is one, but baby powder, baby milk powder is another. Um, the Volkswagen company installed some software to cheat emissions test, and that led to uh, high levels of pollution. The point is not that cheating occurred. The point is that this was considered ethical within. I mean, the bottom line is everything, and there are no moral constraints to maximizing profits. This maximizing profits takes precedence over all other moral considerations. Similarly, Exxon and Big Oil learned that our oil is causing climate change and global warming, and they published research to deny this. They made up fake research and published and tried to prevent people from finding out. And this delayed global climate action and it caused planetary scale environmental harm. So there's a quote by Shoshana Zuboff, who taught for 25 years at Harvard, MBA program, that I have come to believe that what we have been teaching has caused real suffering, and so on. Because the corporations got very bad reputation, this idea of corporate social responsibility was invented mainly to improve the corporate image in public, to get rid of this black image caused by this pursuit of profits without concern for social welfare. And even today, books which teach and courses which teach corporate social responsibility do so by saying that, if we have a good image, we will be able to sell more products. So, in other words, we support arts and we help widows so that we can make more profits. This reminds me of the hadith about the three men. One man will be very wealthy and he will be asked about what he did, and he said, I spent it all on good causes. And Allah Ta'ala will say that you did this because you wanted to be known as a generous man, and you were, and there's nothing for you here. So Western social CSR has no relationship to Islamic CSR because their Nia in CSR is not the one that Islam approves of. So this is the general background. Now we come to the theory of the firm. And so the capitalist theory of firm, which is written in textbooks, is just a fable, a myth. And the only purpose of this myth is to defend capitalism. It has no match to reality. Capitalist theory of the firm is purely normative or utopian. It describes what ought to be, but it is sold as a purely positive or objective theory. When you read the textbook, it says this is what firms do. It doesn't say this is what firms ought to do, but actually, this is false. The theory says that firms combine capital and labor to create output and they sell it to maximize profits. This is really very far from true. But since I'm not talking to an economist audience, I won't go into the details. But the big picture is that the central goal of capitalist economic theory is to counter the Marxist description of how capitalism works. Karl Marx was the first major analyst of capitalist economic system as it was emerging in Great Britain. And he said that basically what he saw is that capitalists own capital and they have power and they use this power to exploit laborers. And he said that basically it's the laborers who create value because they are the ones who are working in the factories while the capitalists are sitting in their luxury. But the laborers who produce the value get very little money and the capitalists get all the money. So he tried to understand how this works. And the Marxist solution to this problem was that since capital is what gives power to the capitalists, the state should own all the capital. No individuals should not have capital, and the state will use the capital for the welfare of the people as a whole. So now we want to understand capitalist economy. So I'm going to talk about 4 types of capital, not mentioned in textbooks. Textbook only consider one type of capital for reasons that I'll discuss. So there is synthetic capital, man-made. We can call this is money basically, but there are others. It is non-productive. It is cheap in the sense that you can print a dollar bill or put an entry into an electronic account, and there's no cost. But to make it work requires institutional infrastructure. So that is costly to set up the system which allows me to make a payment to Amazon via credit card. There's a whole system in place. So there is an institutional infrastructure required, but the money itself is costless to produce. Then there is intellectual capital or knowledge. Sometimes it's similar to human capital, but different. Then there's natural resources, land, oil, buried minerals. This is actually God's gift to humanity as a whole. So the Islamic theory says that benefits of these are all amana. Nobody can own them. Nobody can own them. These things, they can be held in trust temporarily by people. So benefits from these natural resources, which are God's gift, should flow to the public and should not be privatized. And then there is manufactured capital, machines. This is the capital that Karl Marx was referring to. So the old school views, the scholastics, the pre-modern economics was aligned with Islamic views. When it comes to money, this should not earn returns. So that's return to this money, which is zero cost and non-productive, should not earn returns. Knowledge should be made freely available to all seekers. This is Islamic tradition. So there shouldn't be any patents or monopolies on knowledge. What about land and natural resources? Again, there is some controversy about this. Actually, there are some conditions. Land is given to you as an amana. If you can improve it, if you can make it socially worthwhile, you can socially valuable, then you are entitled to returns on it. But if the government assigns you land and you do nothing and you are an absentee landlord, then what is the source? Why should you earn money? This was a recognized problem in England and in economics, and it was called the rentier class, the people who rent their land or to others. They do nothing productive, but they earn returns anyway. And so economists said that this class is harmful because they are doing nothing productive, but they are earning money from this. And finally, there's manufactured machines. in which generally somebody has put in effort and actually produced the machine, and it is a labor saving device. So if it earns returns, then um, that seems to be justifiable. So the in order to understand, so we're talking about what should earn return and what should not earn a return. And this is basically what theory of firm and economics is about. Who should get money? So this basically it's a moral theory. Every moral theory is based on a conception of a society, and it has certain principles. And so the moral theory which Islam provides us is very different from the moral theory for capitalism. As we have said, capitalism views the society as a jungle of competition governed by survival of the fittest. So the principles are individualism, everyone for himself, competition, and since there is no akhirah, so you should pursue pleasure, power, and wealth as an individual. Islamic conception of society is that all humans are brothers and sisters, sons and daughters of Adam and Hawa alayhi salam. And we don't have individuals, we have kinship. Sila Rahmi is very strongly recommended and valued. So within a family, we don't have competition, we have cooperation. Instead of pursuit of pleasure, power of wealth, we are trying to pursue the pleasure of Allah. And by providing service to the creation, the person who has a lot of wealth is more than what he needs. He is supposed to share it. This is a test for him so that he can give the wealth to those who have less than what they need. Similarly, power is given to us not to oppress others, but to help the oppressed. So these are radically different notions, almost the opposite. So today, modern economy is not the capitalist economy that Karl Marx analyzed. In his day, the major form of capital was machines. But today we are in an era of financial capitalism and perhaps transitioning to intellectual or knowledge capitalism. Economies are continuously evolving, and therefore the knowledge that is required to make rulings about this has to be up to date. You cannot give a Sharia ruling on a situation which you do not understand. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the ulama who are trained in the classical fiqh do not learn enough about the modern world to be able to give accurate rulings. So I'm just going to display the changes in the nature of money which has occurred over the past century. So in the 19th century, we had the rule of Great Britain, which was the biggest empire, and their money was the gold, the British pound, which was backed by gold, and this was actually the backbone of their power. Money is very strongly linked to power, although this is not mentioned in the economics textbooks. Then, two world wars in the 20th century bankrupted European economies, and that gave the US dollar the US opportunity to capture the center stage. And in Bretton Woods Conference, they basically kicked out the Great British pound and replaced it by the US dollar. At that point, the US dollar had the largest amount of gold reserves on the globe. European economies were bankrupt and nobody else had such stacks. So their promise to uh, allow the US dollars to be converted to gold was credible at that time. And by making US dollar the central currency, they acquired a huge amount of power, which was reinforced in 1971 when the gold backing was eliminated. And this was replaced by petrodollars, a secret treaty between USA and Saudi, which said that oil will be sold in dollars only. So if Pakistan is buying oil from Nigeria, the transaction place will take place neither in the rupee nor in the Nigerian currency, but in US dollars. This allowed the dollar to be a stable store of value even when the gold backing was eliminated. I understand that this treaty expired recently and it was renewed, the Saudi treaty. But I'm not actually sure of the details. So these are all transitions in money that took place, and each transition creates a new challenge for the Islamic world. The first, the domination of the US dollar, the Bretton Woods, led to the dominance of the US economy and the necessity to trade with it. The Nixon shock created fiat currency, which allowed the US to finance wars all over the world just by paper, and also allowed them to use paper to buy real resources from the rest of the world. In 1999 2000, some laws were passed which created the possibility for creating vast amounts of money outside the outside the scope of legal regulation. So that's called shadow money and shadow banks. And basically, this shadow money, uh, they had no regulations, so they created enormous amounts, and that led to the global financial crisis of 2007 and 8. And today, the shadow money overwhelms the real economy. It is estimated that there is about 20 to 30 times money, shadow money, around the globe, 20 to 30 times the value of the whole global economy. So, this shadow money can buy up the whole world 20 times over. So, I have a paper which is linked here on how these three challenges, how each of these three changes in money leads to a different kind of challenge for the Islamic world, how it cuts down on our sovereignty and the room to maneuver, and what we can do to counter this. But this is not our topic, so I will just mention. So, money, which is something which is not written in the textbooks, is that money is basically power, and the power is most directly represented in wars. So, although all ruling about modern money must be ijtihad because nothing like this has ever existed in the past, but I think the most plausible ijtihad would be to think of money as a natural resource, in which case it should not be privatized. But the way of the world today is that most money is created by private financial institutions for private purposes and in ways that is harmful to the public interest. So the critical questions about money, which are not mentioned in textbooks, because textbooks are designed to conceal the source of power of the capitalists, is who creates money, how is it created, and for what purpose is it created? That is, what do people use newly created money for? So basically, roughly speaking, we can say that private banks and shadow banks are creating money, and they use it to make private profits at the expense of the general public. That's the rough answer. Details would require a lot of work. So, financial institutes are parasites. They leech off the real economy because the money is just paper. It's just electronic transactions which are completely non-productive, but they make the largest amount of money. But the money they make is coming from the blood of the real people who are doing the real work around the world. So they create money. Money can only work based on public trust and on government regulation. So both government is supposed to be of the people and the public trust, and they basically abuse this trust by using this power to make private profits and to harm the public. The most dramatic example of this is, of course, the global financial crisis. The book by Piketty, Capitalism in the 21st Century, shows that increasing income inequality, concentration of power, exactly the thing which is prohibited in the Quran, that do not let it become a thing concentrated in a few hands. This is exactly what happens when the greatest returns available are for money on money. And so the wealthy get the highest returns. If you take money and you build a factory, you'll get 3%, 4%, maximum 10%. But if you use money to speculate on real estate or stocks, you can make a lot more money a lot more quickly. So Michael Hudson has the best analyses of these, readable by general public. Super imperialism shows how the US benefits from its printing dollars, and killing the host talks about how the financial parasites are killing the real economy. So what about Islamic finance? Is it a cure to these problems? Well, it started out with an honest and honorable goal. It was recognized that capitalist finance was giving them a lot of power, and the needs of the Ummah are tied to finance and power. So the hope was that if we can enter the field, we might be able to gain a foothold and we might be able to do benefit to the Ummah. But the empirical experience shows the failure of this ambition. Just like political Islam, which was also an honest and honorable goal, if we could control the world, we could do a lot more. We could build Islamic institutions and get rid of obstacles uh, to Islamic education, and do many other things that would be very nice. But uh, unfortunately, political Islam tried for decades and failed. This just shows empirically that we are not able to do that. So we should be pragmatic and think about, if we don't have the power, let's try to build power instead of trying to fight a hopeless battle. Similarly, financial Islam also fought a battle, and this battle showed that capitalism is too powerful to be defeated on its home ground. So this leads us to the where we stand, which I call third generation. The first generation was of Islamic economics attempted to launch a revolution against capitalism, and they failed. The second generation tried to work within it and to make it to hollow it from the inside, but that also did not work. And Islamic finance, instead of modifying capitalism to be Islamic, which was their goal, modified Islam to be capitalistic. So now the question is, can we create, what should we do? And so the third generation solution is that there are spaces open within the current regimes, both political, economic, where we can operate freely or relatively freely. And if we build the right way, we can create disruptive institutions um, which cause damage to the capitalism. So we can think of accommodative institutions which strengthen capitalism, and disruptive institutions weaken it. Currently, Islamic finance as it is today is an accommodative institution. It strengthens the forces of global capitalism. But it is possible to imagine institutions which would not strengthen it. So there's a paper of mine on building genuine Islamic financial institutions. So basically, capitalist financial institutions say that the goal of life is to increase your wealth, and you should can use all means, halal or haram. The Islamic financial institutions say that you should increase your wealth, but only use halal means. But genuine IFI says that no, our goal is not to increase our wealth. We should spend our wealth to purchase the akhirah. And the Waqf was the dominant financial institution in Islamic civilization. It reflected the spirit of generosity, which is the spirit of the Quran. In contrast, banks, which are the dominant capitalist institution, came into existence after the legitimization of greed in the West. Remember that I said that the biblical motto of love of wealth being bad was replaced by lack of wealth being the problem. And it was this social change which led to the creation of the banks. So, as I said, we can subvert Islamic financial institutions and make them disruptive. How can we do that? The critical element is to change the goal. Instead of profit maximization, we should move to service maximization. Instead of seeking worldly profits, we should seek profits of the akhirah. Now, this doesn't mean that we start giving away money. Making profits is necessary to provide efficient long-term service. Profits that we make can be used for halal, for many halal and recommended purposes, doing research, improving services, etc. Banks and financial institutions are different from other firms. Their product is money, and that's costlessly produced and dependent on public trust and government regulation. So this is a public good, and it should be used for public welfare only. How to do that? That's the question. How can we build these disruptive FIFIs? Social change always starts from where you are. And you take one small step which is feasible in the direction of where you are. The biggest problem occurs because people try to do too much in too short a period of time, and um, then they get discouraged. That's why there's a hadith that ad-deenu matinun. So deen is very strong, so enter it slowly, steadily. So we can't do this all at once. We start with small ones, which are more easy to change, and take small steps. So we should work with community banks. These are the best target for our process. And there is a paper of mine which spells out one model for change, which involves a three-way partnership between governments, Islamic financial institutions, and communities. But basically, how do we create social change? This is a catch as catch can principle. You can do it on a personal way if you have sufficient, if you are running a bank, or if you have access to leadership of a small bank, or you can use community pressure. We can get ulama on board to give rulings. We can change public opinion. This is just, but specifically, what should we trying to do? I think that the useful first step at this time is to create consensus in the public, in the ulama, that if you're going to call yourself an Islamic bank, then you must have a dual bottom line, profits and social services. So every corporation is required by law to present a set of annual accounts saying what they did, how much profits they made, what they invested in, what this. So the dual bottom line says that you should also have a set of books which looks at the social services you provided. Who did you help? How much social harm did you cause? Did you cause pollution, etc.? And this, just keeping the books is a requirement for carrying the label Islamic. So, what are the social services? There are the huge number of potential social services that Islamic banks can perform if they were inclined to do so. Today, because Islamic banks are following the model of Western banks, and Western banks don't think about social service, so this is not on the horizon. But if we start talking about it, they can start doing it. So, first thing is simply to introduce Qarz Hasana. And this is easy for banks to do, but the problem is that people say that, well, what will happen? People will not return. And this is true. The experience for commercial banks in lending at zero interest is very bad. They don't get good rates of return. But returns to loans, microfinance loans to communities based on social responsibility have incredibly high returns, 99% or so. So microfinance at the Akhuwat Foundation, I think it's the largest in the world. It lends billions of rupees to millions of people, and it has a more than 99% return. Um, and this is meant to set up people to buy a push cart or to buy a small business, to buy their a small amount of goods to take to the market to sell. So this is microfinance, but um, commercial banks cannot handle this because the overhead is too high. They and so this requires some special kinds of engineering, and basically communities in conjunction with Islamic banks can create such a thing. So if the banks were to work for social servants instead of maximizing profits, you see, maximizing profits leads to they're purchasing stocks, they're purchasing land, they're doing things which will give you quick returns uh, while harming the public. But if they look for smaller returns and look more for social service, then what they should do is to train people with skills so that they can get jobs. They should give education loans and require repayment on Qarz Hasana. This model is already being followed in the US, except for the fact that they take, huge amount of money is loaned to students, but this is all on interest, so it causes them. So basically, it enslaves the students in the sense that they spend their lives paying back the loan that they took to get their education. We don't want to follow that model, but Qarz Hasana plus Ihsan. If the students are given the money for their education and they are told that your job will be to educate the next generation, then this becomes a pay forward model of loan. And this is something that is feasible to do. And you can also think of a life loan. When a child is born in an underprivileged uh, status, then the Islamic bank can provide him with enough money for his needs until he becomes 20 years old and capable of high functioning human being, and then he can repay the bank from the skills that, and so he gets everything: health, food, clothing, whatever he needs from the bank for a 20-year loan. This is like the mortgage loan in the USA is 30-year loan. You get a huge chunk of money to buy the house, and then you repay it over 30 years. So this is the same concept applied to human beings. You invest in the human being for 20 years, and then he repays you. So these are all innovative ideas which are all feasible if you change your goal from maximizing profits to maximizing service. Uh, banks, insurance is another example where it's a uh, financial institution, and insurance has the property that only people with huge amounts of money can um, can run insurance companies because they have to make bets against other. So the kafil versus insurance is an illustration of how the service mindset differs from the uh, competitive jungle mindset of capitalism. So the kafil means taking care of each other. So a community pools money, and whoever is in need, they can take from the pool. But because this is a cooperative transaction, people in general try not to. So, suppose that there's a the kafil fund set up for communities to take care of damage to housing. Then people, suppose that there is a storm and some houses are damaged, then people are entitled to take money from this fund, but in a responsible and vibrant Islamic community, people will say, no, I will not take money from the pool. Maybe somebody is more needy than me, and I can take care of my own needs. So only people will take from the pool if they are in bad condition. And sometimes it will happen that the other members of the community will insist that, no, brother, you are in need and you must take money, and they will force him to take money. So this is what a cooperative transaction looks like. As opposed to this, an insurance, you make a bet against a financial institution. You say that if my house burns down, then you will pay me. And so, if you remember, but basically the insurance company does its best to not pay you or to minimize payments. Especially this kind of thing happens a lot in health insurance. If you remember, there was some high ranking official in the USA who was murdered by someone who had been denied a insurance claim because his company was just routinely denying claims. So you can see that in insurance you have adversarial transaction. The two people are actually enemies of each other. They benefit from the loss to the other. In a takaful is a friendly transaction. So this is one very important aspect of an Islamic economy, that it builds social relationships. The Islamic firm is a methodology for moving out of the jungle of capitalism into civilization. Today, intellectual capital is like the knowledge in the books, and human capital is when it becomes embodied in your experience. This is the most important form of wealth today. In the past, it was lands and resources that used to be most important wealth, but in the recent past, basically intellectual capital, human capital is the important form of wealth. So Islamic rulings on knowledge are actually the opposite of patents. The patents are ways to monopolize knowledge, ways to make profits. And actually today, uh, this is the most important source of revenue. It's the soft capital or knowledge which is earning the maximum amount of money for the West. And in Islam, in general, knowledge should be shared, and those with knowledge are responsible to share with others. And there's this famous hadith by Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu, okay? On the day of judgment, the question that I'm most afraid of is that Allah Ta'ala will ask me, what will you do with the knowledge that was given to you? So, when knowledge is given to us, we are responsible to put it into practice and to share it with others. So, one of the things that we can do is to create a global skills bank, and this will allow people with skills to share with those who have the capability of learning those skills. And we can encourage transfer of skills within the Islamic world. So, to give an example at random, uh, in Pakistan, the olive industry is just beginning to get started. Turkey has decades of experience. So, uh, There are many villages in Turkey which people have grown up in the olive culture. Pakistan has nothing like that. So if there was some transfer exchange of people with the skills, that would be very helpful. And there are many, many such examples. Among the things that we can do with respect to intellectual capital is to introduce disruptive courses within the universities. That is, courses which challenge the Western conception that we are the most advanced knowledge, and we are the most advanced nation. We have the best form of knowledge. So I have given some suggestions in how we can introduce an Islamic economics as a superior alternative to modern economics in this link. So I've given a lot of proposals which seem like they are random. I mean, something in a basket of apparently unrelated proposals. So I'll try to tie them up together. We're coming towards the end. First, the thing is that we have learned from experiences that nation states are too powerful and too deeply enmeshed in the global capitalism. And similarly, the fire sector, finance, insurance, real estate. Um, Finance also includes stocks and derivatives. This sector is just at the heart of capitalism, and so uh, we can't really engage with this sector very uh, profitably. Um, and so we can't avoid it either. It's too big that we just have to learn how to deal with it, but we should just use with care and not engage too heavily with it. Now, the key is that conventional microeconomics deals with the individual. Islamic micro should be based on the community, the kin, which is so much emphasized in Islamic teachings, the neighborhood, the local neighborhood, not individuals. Islamic macro should be based on the ummah, not on nation states. So conventional macro is based on nation states and pits nations against each other. But in Islamic macroeconomic theory, we should look at the ummah as a whole. And basically, so these are the roots. These are the places where we can exercise power, which are relatively uncontested spaces. So we can find the spaces which are uncontested and work within them. So in the real sector, this is the Islamic firm theory. I've discussed Islamic firms in many different sectors, but this is the standard one. So Islamic firms in the real sector, which you buy fabric and stitch clothes and sell it in a store. So that's a firm. So in the firm, we want to stand with those Tujjar who will be with the Siddiqeen and the Shuhada and the Salihin. And the way to do that is to think of all of the creation as the family of God. And Allah Ta'ala loves best those who serve His family. So the goal of the Islamic firm is to serve the creation of God for the love of Allah. Within an Islamic firm, all the members are equal because we are all participants in the in the um, effort to serve the ummah and to serve mankind and to serve the creation of God, all of the creation. So the flora, the fauna, the trees, the fishes, they are all creation of God. And so environmentalism is natural to Islam because all of this is amana from God. Within a firm, basically, we should organize a firm like a family. And sad to say, that's the Japanese model. Uh, I think Mondragon has been mentioned often by Adi, and that's really, yeah, that's another model which is um, labor owned. So compensation should not be according to work, but it should be balanced with the needs of the employees. It's basically family model is like that. So I have given a broad overview. Everything has a lot of detail, and I've already used up my hour, and we are coming to the end. So now um, these are just ideas Now the question is, how do we achieve these ideas? How do we create social change? How do we have some ideals, and the world that we see is very, very far from it. So what can we do to create social change? So Western social science offers us zero guidance because it is actually just a normative theory which pretends to be a positive theory. As opposed to this, the Islamic approach to the study of society is three-dimensional. It has three components. One is a descriptive component. It describes human beings as they are. So, for example, the Quran says that the human being has in his heart the desire for horses and women and gold and silver. So this is a description of what the situation is. Then there is the ideal state. Well, the description doesn't describe what ought to be, it describes what is. Then we have the ideal state, and that's also described in the Quran. And the fiqh tells us what an ideal society looks like. And then the question is, how do we get from where we are to where we want to be? So that's the transformative theory. Now, the transformative theory requires that you look at where you are and take one step towards the goal. Uh, from where you're standing, there are 360 different directions in which you can move. So the ideal tells you the direction in which you should move. And so that's very helpful. But you have to look at where you are and what is feasible. And maybe the direct step towards the goal is not feasible. So you might want to step to the side, etc. So the issue, there are a huge number of movements for change, movements for Islamic revival, and many of them are not working efficiently because they are being too ambitious. So, for example, I know lots of people who are believers in political Islam. They say that, brother, to make any change, we need to get the government. So, all right. So, how do you get the government? Well, we can't do anything because we don't have the government. So, they are not going to do anything until we get the government. So, this is not a good way to think. Okay, let's suppose that we want to get the government. Then, what is the first step which we need to take to get the government? I mean, you should be, given that you have a goal, every day you should be taking one step towards that goal. And basically, by trying to make change in an area where you have no power, you are doomed to failure. So if you say that, okay, I want to get the government, but what do you do to get the government? There's nothing I can do. So then you are acting outside your sphere of influence. So transformation is an emergent phenomena. Allah Ta'ala will change society if we change ourselves. So this is a message to every student. Examine your own life. Everyone has a unique set of capabilities, skills, talents, opportunities, and social networks. So think about what you can do, what is feasible. And everyone, every single person can create significant local change in his own, working within his or her sphere of influence. You can create change. Anybody who is modestly well off can change 10 lives easily if you want to. So basically, if you do what you can trust Allah Ta'ala to do the rest. And so this is how change starts. Everybody does what they can do. And this is what the meaning of the word emergent is. We don't know what will happen on the macro level. But Allah Ta'ala looks at, there's a hadith that the amal of the ummah go up and then the decisions of Allah Ta'ala come down. So when every one of us is doing whatever they can, then the decisions of Allah, good decisions, will be coming down, and these are the things that will create the global change. So that's the last slide. So we can conclude with the dua. Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittaba'ahu wa arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinabahu. And that's the end of my lecture, and we can now take questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asad, for your time and for the presentation and preparing that, especially for us. It was very educational and informative, and I think I'm sure many of us will probably need to go back to that presentation to digest all of it. It was a very good summary, and there was also, I'm sure, some very, very useful papers and articles that Dr. Asad is linked to, which we can all read for further reading. Just before we move on to the question and answers, as I mentioned at the beginning, many of you here are from the study with Dr. Adi, where we studied Imam Ghazali's book 13 of the Ihya, which was a transformative experience for many of you. And that took place over 8 weeks. And we benefited from Dr. Adi's knowledge. We read the whole book together. We studied it. We contextualized it. People really got some key insights into how they approach their own work and businesses with that. We were suggested lots of papers, articles, books, and it's culminated in this very wonderful presentation by Dr. Asad. And the next book we'll be studying is actually Kitab al-Kasb by Muhammad al-Shaybani. And just very quickly about the book. So this is a book that Dr. Adi has translated into English. And it's one of the earliest works to connect earning a livelihood with spiritual development. Though many today might see it as an early work of economics or microeconomics, its true purpose was to explain zuhud, which is detachment from worldly greed while still engaging in work. Imam al-Shaybani shows that real asceticism and prudence are not about abandoning the world, but about maintaining integrity, patience, and faith through the everyday struggles of earning, whether through trade, employment, or craft. So in essence, Kitab al-Kasb teaches us how we work and how, when we work and earn, how that's one of the greatest tests and proofs of our spiritual discipline. So it was a very early work combining spirituality and business and faith. We'll be studying that book next in January. Dr. Adi will be teaching that. I'll be hosting. And if anybody is interested in studying this book, which is one of the most important books you can study on this topic, I'm going to share with you a link in the chat right now, and it will take you under 2 minutes to fill this in, and then I'll have your details to hand, and somebody on our team will reach out to you in due course. So if anybody wants to study Kitab al-Kasb by Muhammad al-Shaybani with Dr. Adi, please fill in this form. Thank you again to Dr. Asad, and we'll move on to the question and answers now. We have about 45 minutes. So you are free to type in questions into the chat if you would like to. Anybody that would like to ask questions directly to Dr. Asad, please do so. So do we have any hands up at the moment? We'll just go full screen. Can't see anybody with the hand up yet. Okay, we have Zaid.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Thank you for a very, very enlightening lecture. This opens up a lot of other questions or clarifies a lot of contradictions that I had during earning, trying to run a business and even while earning. So the question I wanted to ask you, uh, Sheikh, is regarding the essence that you had started with of Western civilization and how it contradicts the essence of Islamic civilization. Is there anywhere we can find more detailed thoughts of yours on that?
Well, yes, my blog, azprojects.wordpress.com, has a lot of articles on many different issues and aspects. So more work of mine is easily available. I can put up the blog link in the chat.
Thank you, Dr. Asad. Are there any any books or is there anything recent that you put out that you would recommend us all to benefit from, or learn from, or
I have a
practice?
book on Amazon, which is, I think, this book has been translated into Turkish and Bengali and Indonesian, Bahasa, and is available in Pakistan also in a local edition.
Excellent. So, if everyone saves the name, and please check out the book by Dr. Asad for further reading. Thank you for that. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I just like to comment on that question by Zach, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so there is this book, I think, by Ahmad Keeler, no, that famous British Muslim who founded the World of Islam Festival in the 70s. So he has this book, Rethinking Islam and the West. So Rethinking Islam and the West give like a broad view of the spirit, the contrasting spirit between Islam and the West. Islam is more about balance, but then the West is, I mean, goes to extreme. So I think that book is like a good intro into trying to get a big picture contrast between the spirit of Islamic civilization and Western civilization. Yeah. So Ahmad Keeler, Rethinking Islam and the West, and he has many YouTube talks. I think you can Google him, and he's based at Cambridge, UK. Right. Well, I just add to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Adi. It's a very good book. It's good to read. Um, and yeah, it provides interesting insights, even in terms of there's one occasion in the book where he talks about how in Muslim societies, if you saw that your neighbor or the person next to you wasn't selling anything, and a customer came to you, Muslims often in the past would say, don't buy from me, buy from the person next to me, right? They haven't, they wouldn't even necessarily say they haven't sold anything, right, out of other, but there was this cooperation between Muslim businesses. It wasn't this kind of cutthroat competition. Thank you, Dr. Adi. Do you have any other questions?
Yes, one more question.
Yes, please, Riaz.
Yeah, from Howard here. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Zaman. So question would be, you talked about, social sciences and how, I guess, things are taught in Western society. So if someone's trying to start a business in the West, right, sometimes society or the social sciences would say you have to get certain education to specific standards, right, before, let's say, you get into a specific field of business. How do we reconcile that with, okay, just getting started and figuring it out, versus maybe getting the right Islamic education towards a specific business, like say, for example, trying to solve a educational need in the local community. So how do we? The question really is, maybe getting a degree is such a big deal, right? Or it's going to take many years, but then a lot of what we're going to learn there may be, let's say, not aligned with Islamic values. So how do you kind of think about what's the right initial education or knowledge I need to get before I start a business with the right way, maybe?
Well, as far as starting a business is concerned, many entrepreneurs start business without getting any education, and getting an economics degree or an MBA has very little to do with real entrepreneurship. If you want to launch your own business, you don't need any degree. What an MBA program does, it's very important to understand, is to prepare you for a job within the corporate sector. So they don't teach you how to launch your own business at all. They just teach you how to get a job within the existing corporate uh, structure. So entrepreneurs are creative people who look at the situation and analyze it and extract places where they can serve the public and do so in a way which will allow them to earn sufficient so that they don't have needs, they don't need to beg from others. So profits is definitely a part of a business, and that requires ingenuity. Entrepreneurship requires creativity, looking at the situation, assessing the needs, assessing the market. And also, I mean, the difference between an Islamic entrepreneur and a capitalist entrepreneur is capitalist is just looking for profit. So if you go, he goes to a neighborhood and sees that if you open up a gambling tavern or if you open up a pool hall, you can get a lot of customers. There are lots of teenagers, but and so he will do that because that has profits. On the other hand, if some Islamic minded person says, okay, these are underprivileged youngsters and they need to be shown a path out of this slum and poverty, and they need to be educated. So he will try to develop a tutorship program which builds character and shunts them onto some track which will um, lead them to have positive roles in society. And he will, yani, if you think about service, then you will find a way. Allah Ta'ala will show you the way to do that in such a way that you don't need to ask anybody else for help financially. I mean, you'll get by. You will not get maximized profits, but you will get enough to feed you and more.
Thank you very much.
There are no lots of hands.
Thank you, Dr. Asad, for that. We'll start with Sharif, then Riaz, then Junaid. And I think Sanjida had a question. Don't know if you still do. Start with Sharif, please.
Bismillah. Assalamu
Wa alaikum
alaikum.
assalam.
Barakallah Feek, Sheikh Asad and Brother Omar. Very informative and learned a lot, alhamdulillah, more to look into. But Bismillah, just a question and a query, please. Apologies. First of all, the question is simple question, to show my ignorance, sort of, astaghfirullah. But Kakafil is it repayable? Like, or is it they put it in and then because they put it into the group pyramid scheme, if it could be called such, I'm not sure if that's a good analogy for it. But is it repayable? And the query again, I heard on Tahqiq at Attic books that the ulama in post 11th century, they got involved. First they were merchants and then they got involved with the military. Yes, alhamdulillah, it doesn't. There is some governmental scholars nowadays, alhamdulillah, but it doesn't seem that that's the norm, sort of. But could you just stuff like pinpoint, just give us a brief history of the role of the ulama? There's a book about
Role of what?
authoritarian rule or something.
I'm failing to understand the word that you're using.
The role of the ulama.
Of
the
the
role of
ulama.
ulama. Were they
I
with
see.
the military ever in the past?
I don't know enough about this
Sorry, controversial, sorry.
to be able to comment. The ulama have played positive roles and negative roles throughout history, and just like the rest of us, I think they have had failings corresponding to the social failings, and they have also had some very positive contributions. But there's 14 centuries of history and millions of ulama, so I don't think there's any generalization that one could make about that. But I don't know enough history to say.
Thank you, Dr. Asad. There was a study done that within the first few centuries of Islam, that many of the ulama were traders and merchants, business people, a significant amount. I don't remember the exact percentage, but it was quite high. And there was a talk which mentioned this by a Canadian historian, which I can send to whoever wants it. I can send it to you afterwards. With regards to the military, I don't know either. But thank you for the question, Sharif. Riaz, we'll go to you.
Can I just interrupt, please, again? Sorry. Can I just ask more questions? Sorry. The disruptive means, I'm really sorry, but the disruptive means, is there any pragmatic steps to take it to get in courses involved in the university and the other steps as well? Sorry, Sheikh Asad and Omar, sorry, and everyone.
Yeah, this is a question of strategy. What can be done, what is feasible. And so there are some, of course, there are some classical examples of disruption, like the Uber is an example of disruption of the taxi cab market, and Airbnb is disruption of the rental market. But there are many technologies which are disruptive in the sense that it has to have certain characteristics. It has to be able to establish itself within a hostile atmosphere. This is one of the any Islamic business. When you try to do it, it will be in a hostile atmosphere. People are not used to this, and if you say that we want to cooperate, they will misunderstand you, and they will think that this is another trick, competitive. So you're operating in a hostile environment. So the issue is, how can you get a foothold? How can you start a business which is Islamic in spirit and can survive within a hostile environment? So we have many startups which have survived, and equally many which have failed. So one has to learn from experience. Any genuinely Islamic enterprise will be disruptive. Just like Islamic finance was meant to be a disruptive enterprise, but it got seduced into becoming a supporter and strengthener of capitalism. And still the potential exists for it to become disruptive, to start doing things in a way different from how capitalist banks work. So this is all, I mean, there's no, I don't think I can give any general guidelines. It depends on the business, depends on where you are, depends on what your strengths are relative to and how hostile the environment is. So it's all very local and heterogeneous.
Thank you very much for the answer. Thank you for the question also. Riaz, will come to you next.
Thank you very much. For a pleasure to have the talk. Umar, it's a very simple question, really. Would like to ask Asad is, which country currently provides the best environment to set up an Islamic finance? Bank, institution, Kaisha, whatever, sort of cooperative setup that can help other businesses. Currently, is he aware of right now? Is it Malaysia? Is it Indonesia?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Every country has their own brand of Islamic finance. They have their own particular style. Pakistan, Dubai, Turkey, Malaysia, Indonesia. I think Malaysia and Indonesia are similar, but even there are significant differences. So, all of them are different. None of them are genuine.
Yeah.
None of them are pure, but I think Indonesia is doing a lot of work, good work in terms of moving in the right direction.
Second part of my question was following on for that. Try and keep it as short as possible. Is which institution do you see globally that stands out for you that actually is following the Islamic finance principles and operating? If not the country, which company?
Well, I think that I am in one of them, and that is Ahuat Microfinance. They are providing
Yes, I heard.
large scale qarz hasana to people after they all the loans are given in the masjid with the local community involved, and the loans are given for productive purposes. And millions of people have received loans of very small amounts, and we have many stories of changed lives as a result of these loans.
That's similar to the microfinance set up in Bangladesh by, I forgot the doctor's name. I think it sounds like similar.
Yeah, actually, I think that if my theory of social change is correct, then we will have a lot of actions in a lot of communities, and none of them will be big enough to make a splash, a headline in the pages. There's a very interesting study of conversion to Islam following in the early centuries after the Muslims conquered Persia and Rome. Then how did and eventually all of these places became nearly 100% Muslim with very small pockets of original religion. So what was the process of conversion? So the studies show that a very interesting study by an author, I forgot, he looks at the names on the registers of the tax rolls, and he shows a gradual conversion. So there's no big figure, no one saint who converted thousands of people. Actually, it seems like the process was that people worked on their neighbors, and so oh, in there's no big conversion drive of any sort. So one person would reach two or three others. So nobody did anything that was remarkable. But overall, the effect was such that the entire population got converted. So similarly, that's the way I think that change works, that every Muslim does their little bit and huge change emerges, but nobody is particularly noticeable that, look, he did that. Everyone is doing something fairly small. I hope that answers.
Yeah, I just like to add to that. The thing is that we need to go beyond the headline. But a lot of the interesting stuff, I mean the really good stuff that are happening in communities, they are not on the headlines. They are not in the standard textbook. They're not in the standard BBA, MBA, right? So like for instance, the in Indonesia, that and about finance, we need to redefine what we mean by finance, because unless we redefine what we mean by finance, that finance, I mean, by default, this means like debt base, usual debt base financial intimidations. But proper Islamic finance would be like it's more like a community investment fund, right? Such that the surplus of the local community is mobilized by this fund owned by the community through a cooperative. So that means a proper Islamic finance should be registered outside the conventional banking act, but and registered under the cooperative act. So we take it out of the conventional banking system, so that in substance it becomes like a community by mal, in which the surplus of the local community is mobilized by this community investment fund owned by the members, the people who put their money there, and managed by them and controlled by them, and the investment and the loans policy are determined by them. And in Indonesia, we have like 10 million strong Baitumal Tamil Baitumal community investment fund. Like it's a network of local independent community investment cooperative. And they all started very small. I mean, they started about like 30 years ago. I guess a bunch of friends, they came together, they meet in the coffee shop and think how to get the local traders in the market, free them from the loan shark, right? And so all these successful examples are not in the headline, but we need to like someone like Mondragon. It started by a priest, and it's based on the co-op, and it started in the 50s and started as a vocational trade school, right? And then but all these examples that are relevant to our values, they are not in the headlines, they are not in the standard textbook. So we need to know how to go beyond the headlines and go beneath the radar, and one of the purpose of this course, and also like for example like Professor Asad, you mentioned about Ahuat, right? And before you, I never heard about
Yes.
Ahuat. All I heard of is Mizan Bank, which are like the conventional Islamic finance, but nobody heard about Ahuat. And Indonesia, nobody hears about the Baitul Mal Tamil. So when I talk about Islamic finance, so I have to redefine that, or the bank redefine it as community Baitul Mal, meaning that the surplus of the local community are mobilized through this co-op owned by members of the community who put their money there and run by them, and then the investment, the loans are based on the needs of the local community. So and that was the basis for the success of Mondragon, which is now the biggest corporation. It's like the 10 largest corporation, corporation. So a lot of so we need to like finance is like a big and morbid word. We have to think about how do we rethink its internal structure. So legally we need to I mean, if you want to do like a really serious Islamic finance owned by the people who put their money into it, therefore we need to register that. We need to register it outside the conventional banking act and put it under the cooperative structure. And there are many examples like this. In Europe, we have the World Bank. In Switzerland, we have the DAX Members Bank. In Sweden, and then we have Mondragon has its own. So a lot of these examples started by local communities, and some of them have grown very big in terms of asset and so on. All these are not in the headlines. Are not. So we really need to go below the radar, and one of the big purpose of having courses like this, what Professor Asad called disruptive, is that it helps us to see things that before we haven't really like thought of seeing, because we have not gone to this process of unlearning and relearning. So in the case of finance, we have to unlearn a lot of stuff about finance and relearn and reconceptualize finance as community Baitul Mal, right?
Right.
And once we do that, then a bank, like in this sense, it's just a structure by which the surplus of the local community can be mobilized to be reinvested into the community through Qara Hasan or through micro investment funding based on Mudoraba. So and Alhamdulillah, the PMT movement, the Baitul Mal wa Tamil community investment movement in Indonesia is a big success story, and especially the Mondragon of the Far East. But nobody, not even people in Malaysia, knew just next door know about this. So right, so I mean so we need to deconstruct what we mean by finance. I think that's the short answer. Thank you.
Thank you so
Sorry
much.
for for spending too much time here right now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asad and Dr. Adi. I think we have two more questions. Junaid first, and then Sanjida.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, Dr. Saab. My name is Junaid and I'm from Kashmir. We recently had some email exchanges and I've been listening to you for a long time. So my question is basically I've been trying to get feedback on this because you, in the end of your lecture, you discussed various methods or solutions that can put things right in the Muslim world or Islamic finance. Like how do you see like if a student who is trained in the STEM physics, chemistry, or engineering, he is given some money by the community or by the bank to set up, say, a shoe manufacturing plant. And then he's just given this money to really, the income stream from this project is really given to him to study Islamic sciences, such that he's trained in both the religious as well as positive sciences. So later on, we will have somebody, who is owning wealth, and because he's religiously trained, he will naturally be really compassionate to the workers, and at the same time, he can really be creative in the positive science he's trained in. How do you see this model of Muzaraba?
I don't really understand the model that you're putting forth.
Let me repeat it. Like somebody is trained in physics. People, for example, 4 people, they are trained in physics or chemistry. We just have it in the Muslim world. Later on, a community, it provides funds to set up a shoe plant.
Yes.
Once this shoe plant is set up, the income stream from this shoe plant, it is given to these students to study Islamic sciences, Quran, Hadith, Fiqh, etc. in a Darul Uloom. Later on, once these people graduate from the Darul Uloom, they are given ownership of this shoe plant. It means that these people will be trained in both the sciences, that is in physics as well as Islamic sciences. At the same time, they will be owners of this shoe plant, wherein you will have some shareholders as well who have really contributed to this project. So I think that, in case such units are set up, we will have people who will be creative in physics or chemistry or artificial intelligence, because religion will help them. And at the same time, these will be the owners of this economic unit, which will deal justly with the workers.
Right. Okay. I have an idea. You see, I am not very happy with the process of Western education, which basically teaches people a huge amount of theory and very little in terms of practice. Actually, there's a epistemological problem here, that action and theory, knowledge and practice, these were bifurcated by Descartes, and this continues to this day, the so-called mind-body problem. The mind thinks and the body acts, and the two are completely different things and separate activities. So basically, when you say teach people physics, I think that a graduate education in physics makes one completely useless, because you can't do anything. You can't run a shoe factory because you're not taught anything relevant to real world. So the fact that modern education is becoming very irrelevant is something which many people have noted, especially in the computer sciences. These days, you can get a job just by demonstrating your ability to program, whether or not you have a degree. And lots of people with degrees don't know how to program. And similarly, exactly, the recent comment is that Western education is just a brainwashing into superiority of Western knowledge and culture and doesn't really teach you any practical skills. So um, nowadays, there is a lot of opportunity available to learn real world skills for computers, especially, but even in other areas. In my own field, when I was teaching econometrics, I realized very quickly that after my courses, nobody knows how to do econometrics. It's like, and I changed my teaching style dramatically. It's like basically the way I was taught, you learn about the engine and the radiator and the spark plugs and everything else in the car, but you don't know how to drive. So that's what Western education is like. Teaching how to drive is a rather different matter from teaching the engine and how the car works. And so this is the theory practice divide, which makes most Western education very useless. Similar.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I just like to add on that. I think like in the West now, there is a new type of college that combines or integrates academic learning with vocational skills. So students enroll, of course they do the normal academic programs, but then they combine that with some trade skills. So they learn a practical living skills. So I think that we need to have a new type of college in which that combines between like academic study with vocational training, like so I mean that's one approach. So yeah, that's my input into how to rethink the future of higher education to make it more. We really need to produce graduates with living skills, not just book knowledge. Which after the exam they forget everything, and then less than 1% of what they learn has real world application. So all right, so yeah, so kind of like work colleges, and they call that in the West side. I think in the East, uh, we should have that, but like a integration between intellectual skills and vocational skills. Wallah.
So my question is in regards to knowledge. So like let's say when it comes to starting a business, obviously one of the prerequisites is that you have knowledge within that field that you want to do business in, right? So a lot of the times, let's say you have like you want to start like a just randomly like you want to go into cosmetics and you start a like facial cream serums kind of like business and you have like the basic knowledge, but then in order to compete with everyone else in the market, there is a limit of knowledge that you need to attain. Like people who are dermatologists or who have medical training, they have more credibility within the field of dermatology and giving serums and suspending such cosmetic products. So like another avenue you'd go through is getting mentorship, but that's not on offer. So how would you go about going into a business without, either going to university or getting a mentorship. And if you, let's say you do end up wanting to seek a mentorship from a cosmetic brand, they say that you need to go to uni in order to be to be considered for any type of mentorship. So it's just like it always goes back to you need to have a university degree in order to get any type of training from any business field.
Right.
Which is quite frustrating.
Well, if you ask Allah Ta'ala that what is the best use I can make of my life, I dedicate it to you, and I will do whatever path I am shown, then Allah Ta'ala will open a path for you, perhaps one that was hidden and one that you could not see, and one that would not be arise by the normal asbab. And He will use your life and wealth and energies which He has purchased in return for the Jannah. Basically, the problem that we face is that we want to exercise our own autonomy. We want to withhold our portion of the bargain with God. We want to say that I want to do something in accordance with my interests and desires, and I will. I want to. Partially, I will obey God, but in the main, I will not do the haram, and I will follow the main line of guidance. But in the peripheral areas, I will follow my own interests. So, to the extent that you submit your decisions to Allah, you will be shown the way out of these dilemmas. And there's no general guidance that can be given because everyone is faced with a different test. So the only thing is that when you are trying to decide what to do with your life, you should ask Allah for guidance and then act on the directions that you are shown in response to this dua.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asad. We have one.
Yeah, I just I just like to add to that question. Like, okay, I just like, okay, one way you can go about it is that okay, you have your own non-professional interest in, let's say, natural cosmetic, and you want to go into business in that, but then you need to be certified, and that means having a BA or MA. But then, in which case, you can partner with a certified, like registered certified dermatologist, and partner with that professional and start your business, right? So and many people do that, right? Right. So okay, you're not like recognized as a doctor. Okay, you want to start a hospital or a clinic, then you partner with a doctor or partner with a technician. So through partnership, right? So through partnership, a non-expert can partner with an expert and start a business that requires the expertise of the expert, and expertise that is recognized by the government or by the authorities. So I mean that's one way to go around that problem without actually spending 10 years in college.
Yeah.
Wallah
I
alam.
would like to add just a little bit. Basically, one has to distinguish between the diploma as a requirement for recognition and knowledge. Knowledge is now widely available. The theoretical knowledge is easily available on the internet with a little bit of mentorship. Yes, there's lots of garbage, so you need a mentorship because to sort out the false. And then there's experiential knowledge, which you gain by acting, and that's again requires some mentorship. And that's what I said, that this is the most valuable kind of knowledge, and we need to create Islamic skill banks. That's really the um, and this can be at the local community level. And normally, if you're looking for a skill, you will be able to find As there's a Buddhist proverb that when the student is ready, the Buddha will appear.
Yes, I think so. So the idea, yeah, there's some skills bank, right? So
Yeah.
okay, you want to start this business, but then you are not recognized as expert. You just go into the skill bank. Have a partner with that skill and partner with him or her, and then presto, no, all right. so it's not a real problem, right? Right.
Yeah, that is a problem. Yes.
Like for example, right now, we are partnering with Professor Asad. Asad has a certain background in his field that I don't have and Omar don't have. So okay, so I think I think
Yes, I
just
think this is
by
true that
partnering,
among the Muslims, you will easily find people who have knowledge are willing to share. This is my experience. I mean, that if they are approached properly and they understand that this is a good cause, everybody is willing to help because this is part of Islam, part of Islamic training. That knowledge is not is a gift of God and it's an amana. And if somebody asks for it, then you are under obligation to share.
right? I mean, there are many like example of successful businesses startups started by somebody who are interested in clothing or in cosmetic, but no expert in that thing, but just like real interest. Then you partner with an expert, partner with a professional, and presto, finish. The problem is solved, right? Anyway, that's one solution, right? The Islamic Skills Bank, that's it, the skill bank or the community skill bank, right? So we can, okay, look into the skills bank. So so every local community needs to have like a registrar, right? And in fact, the concept of this skill bank is actually discussed a lot in social permaculture, and this skill bank is part of it's part of acting on the imperative of fardu kifaya, right? So given the concept of fardu kifaya, that means in practice we must have this community skills bank, right? Anyway, so that's my input to that question.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
That's a brilliant idea, that skill bank, right? That's it.
Yes, inshallah.
Thank you so much to Dr. Asad. We've reached the 2-hour mark. I don't want to keep you any further. Also, probably a bit torturous for Dr. Adi and anyone else in Malaysia or Indonesia. It's very, very late. So Dr. Asad, thank you once again for a really wonderful presentation. It was very educational. The comments reflected that everyone really benefited. So thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure. Please feel free to check out Dr. Asad's work, his papers, and also his books, which you can find on Amazon or maybe elsewhere. So please do support his work, and hopefully Dr. Asad will have you back in the near future. And then finally, if anybody would like to join the next study group with Dr. Adi and myself, we'll be studying Muhammad al-Shaybani, who was one of the 2 great students of Abu Hanifa and a student of Imam Malik and a teacher of Imam Shafi'i, heavily influenced Imam Ahmad, so a very, very influential scholar in our tradition. He wrote a fantastic book, which we'll be covering in January, which combines, how to work and relating that to our spirituality. So feel free to join that. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Looking forward to seeing all of you very soon. Take care and good night. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much, Professor Asad. We'll hope to see you again, and maybe inshallah we'll have you, maybe after Ramadan to teach a standalone course from you, maybe the history of the Western social sciences and how to transcend that blinkers. Shukran.